The Unspoken Farewell. Chapter 1. The Echo in the Silence. The grand chandelier in my Boston townhouse cast an icy, unforgiving light on the blueprint spread across my dining table. Lines, angles, perfect symmetry. My life as an architect was a testament to order, control, and precision. Every structure I designed stood firm, unyielding. Unlike my own foundations, which had begun to crumble a year ago. It had been a crisp autumn afternoon when the call came. My sister, Chloe, dead. An accident. A sudden cruel twist of fate on a winding coastal road in Maine. And then, the echo. The echo of her last phone call, hours before, ringing unanswered on my desk, muted by the hum of my demanding career. I had been on a conference call, a crucial negotiation. I silenced my phone. I'll call her back later, I'd thought, a fleeting promise swallowed by the urgency of deadlines. There was no later. Now, a year later, the guilt was a living, breathing entity, a constant companion in the hollow silence of my nights. Every night, she came to me, in my dreams, Chloe, not as I remembered her, vibrant and laughing, but spectral, ethereal. She would stand by a tumultuous ocean, the waves crashing around her, sometimes reaching for me, sometimes just staring, her eyes holding an enigmatic sadness. Her voice, a chilling whisper, would repeat fragmented phrases. The water, it will wash everything away. My hands, they don't see. Under the old tree, the key, and always the piercing absence of forgiveness. She never said she forgave me, not for not answering, not for not being there. Her silence in the dreams was a louder accusation than any scream could be. I ran a hand through my hair, the cold sweat clinging to my brow. Another night, another visit. The sleeplessness was a constant torment. My sharp architectural mind, once my greatest asset, felt clouded, sluggish. My colleagues noticed. My clients noticed. The perfectly ordered life I had built was fraying at the edges. During the day, the waking world offered no escape. Her voice, a faint murmur, would sometimes pierce the drone of the city. I'd catch glimpses of her, a flash of red hair in a passing crowd, a familiar laugh from a cafe, only to realize it was a trick of my tormented mind. Hallucinations, my therapist would call them. Dr. Lenora Woods, a kind, older woman with piercing blue eyes, tried to help me make sense of it all, listened patiently to my fractured narratives of guilt and ghosts. "Olivia," she'd said, her voice calm, "these dreams, these perceptions, they are your subconscious attempting to process unresolved grief, unexpressed emotions. Your sister's voice, the phrases, they are not literal condemnations. They are symbols, clues. Your mind is trying to tell you something. Perhaps something Chloe herself was trying to tell you." I scoffed. "She's trying to tell me she hates me for not picking up the phone." Dr. Woods shook her head gently. "Grief often manifests as guilt. You're punishing yourself, Olivia. But perhaps Chloe's message is not about blame, but about something else entirely. Unfinished business. A hidden truth. A hidden truth. Chloe, the artist, the free spirit, always held secrets. She lived her life on her own terms, retreating to our grandmother's old house on the wild coast of Maine a few years ago. She painted, she sculpted, she communed with the ocean. Our calls were infrequent, brief updates on our vastly different lives. I, the pragmatic older sister, always pushing, striving. She, the ethereal younger sister, always creating, dreaming. "Go back there, Olivia," Dr. Woods suggested one session. "Go to her house, to her space. Perhaps the answers, The clues are there, in the physical realm, not just in your dreams. The idea terrified me. Stepping back into Chloe's world, a world I had neglected in life, felt like a betrayal. But the relentless dreams, the suffocating guilt, the gnawing certainty that something was missing, I had to. I had to find a way to silence the echo, to understand the unspoken farewell. Chapter 2: The Artist's Whisper. The drive from Boston to the coast of Maine was a journey through my own fractured memories. Each mile took me further from the sterile order of my city life and closer to the wild, untamed beauty that Chloe had embraced. The landscape transformed from manicured suburbs to ancient, rugged forests, eventually giving way to the dramatic, rocky coastline. Lashed by the relentless Atlantic, Chloe's house stood perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. A small, weathered cottage that had been our grandmother's. It was exactly as I remembered it. Paint peeling, shutters crooked, but imbued with a unique, artistic charm. The scent of salt and pine filled the air, mingled with something else, something faintly sweet, like old oil paints. I pushed open the creaking front door. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight. The house was exactly as Chloe had left it, frozen in time. Canvases leaned against walls, some finished, some abandoned. Brushes lay in dried puddles of paint. Her easel stood by the large window overlooking the sea, a half-finished landscape still on it. I walked through the rooms, a ghost in her world. Her eclectic collection of books, her vintage record player, the mismatched pottery she'd made herself. And then I saw it. On a small cluttered desk in her art studio, a stack of sketchbooks. My heart pounded. Chloe's sketchbooks were sacred. She rarely showed them even to me. They were her raw thoughts, her unguarded emotions. I hesitated, a profound respect for her privacy warring with my desperate need for answers. The dreams, the words, the water, it will wash everything away. My hands, they don't see. Under the old tree, the key. I opened the top sketchbook. The pages were filled with vibrant, expressive drawings. Landscapes of the rugged Maine coast, portraits of local fishermen, whimsical creatures of the sea. But as I flipped deeper, a different pattern emerged. Drawings of a stormy ocean, waves crashing with an almost violent energy. Figures, often alone, standing by the water. And then, strange, almost abstract images, swirling water, hands obscured by mist, a gnarled ancient tree. My breath hitched. The very images from my dreams. She had drawn them. She had seen them. Or perhaps she was trying to show me something. I found a series of entries that were not drawings, but quick, almost frantic notes, scribbled in her distinctive, sprawling handwriting. The cold, it seeps in. They don't know. They can't know. Not yet. The pain, it whispers. Like the tide, it comes and goes, but it always comes back. My hands, they shake now. The colors blur. They won't see. They won't understand the true work. The water, it cleanses. It hides. It takes everything away. But it also remembers. And then a repeated phrase, underlined multiple times. The key, under the old sentinel tree. The only one who listens. The only one who knows. The old sentinel tree. I remembered it. A massive ancient oak, its branches gnarled and twisted by centuries of coastal winds. Standing sentinel on a small rise overlooking the house and the sea. It was the oldest tree on the property, a landmark we'd played under as children. My mind raced. Was she sick? What pain? What did she mean they don't know? My stomach clenched. Had she been hiding something from us? From me? The call I hadn't answered. Was she trying to tell me something then? I looked around the studio. On a small table, Tucked beneath a pile of old canvases was a smaller, more personal canvas. It was a self-portrait of Chloe. Her vibrant eyes, her whimsical smile. But something was wrong. Her hands were incomplete, ghostly, almost translucent, as if fading into the background mist. And in the background, faintly visible, was a small, lonely lighthouse. This wasn't just about my guilt anymore. This was about Chloe, her secret, her unspoken farewell. The clues were here, scattered amidst her art, whispered in her journals, echoed in my dreams. I had to find the tree. I had to find the key. Chapter 3: The Sentinel Tree and the Hidden Truth. The ancient sentinel tree stood majestic and defiant against the relentless coastal winds, its gnarled branches reaching towards the tumultuous sky. It was exactly as I remembered it from my dreams and Chloe's sketches. Its roots, thick as anacondas, snaked across the rocky ground. I walked around its immense trunk, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and anticipation. Under the old tree, the key, Chloe's voice from my dreams echoed in my ears. I searched, my fingers tracing the rough bark, pushing aside fallen leaves and tangled undergrowth. Then, my fingers brushed against something hard and metallic, half buried beneath a particularly thick root. I dug frantically, my nails caked with damp earth. It was a small, tarnished brass key, not a house key. A key to a small lockbox, perhaps. I remembered then. Chloe always wore a small wooden box on a leather cord around her neck. She called it her story box. She'd never let me see inside. She'd claimed it held secrets too precious for words. Had this key belonged to it? I returned to the house, my hands trembling. I found the leather cord in her bedroom, hanging from a bedpost. No box. My heart sank. Had it been lost in the accident? Was it somewhere in the house? Hidden away? I searched frantically, my gaze sweeping the small room. Under her pillow? In a drawer? Then my eyes fell on a loose floorboard near her bedside table. My grandmother, ever the pragmatist, had always kept a few loose boards in the house for emergency storage. With a grunt, I managed to pry it up, and there it was, tucked into the dusty cavity, a small, hand-carved wooden box, dark and smooth from years of being handled, and next to it, a small, leather-bound journal. My fingers trembled as I inserted the brass key into the box. It clicked open with a soft, resonant sound. Inside, nestled on a bed of dried lavender, was a tiny, intricately carved wooden bird, its wings outstretched, and beneath it, a single folded piece of paper. Not a letter, a diagnosis, typed. My eyes scanned the medical jargon, my blood running cold. Stage 4, pancreatic, aggressive, prognosis, months. Chloe had been dying for months, and she hadn't told anyone. Not me, not Mom, not even Elijah, her on-again, off-again boyfriend, whom she adored. I picked up the leather-bound journal, my vision blurring. This was her true story box, her final, unspoken farewell. Her elegant script filled the pages, but now it was uneven, sometimes shaky, betraying the physical pain she must have endured. August 12th, last year. The whispers grow louder, not the oceans, the whispers of the pain. It's spreading, like an ink stain on a fresh canvas. I hate that I'm alone with this, but I can't tell them. I can't bear to see their faces, their pity, their sorrow. I want them to remember me as I am, free, full of life. September 5th. The fatigue is crushing. My hands, they feel like lead. I can barely hold a brush. My art, it's becoming a struggle. And they don't see. They don't see the effort. They just see the finished piece, or the incomplete one. They don't see the struggle in my hands, the pain. My eyes welled with tears. My hands, they don't see. Her words from my dreams. It wasn't an accusation. It was a cry for recognition, for someone to see her invisible battle. October 20th. The doctor says it's weeks now, maybe less. I've started working on the last piece, a self-portrait. But my hands, I can't finish them. They are fading, like me. The mist is gathering. It will hide everything. The self-portrait, the unfinished hands, the mist. It was all a metaphor for her fading life. Her unspoken battle. November 3rd, the call to Olivia. I needed to tell her, just once, to hear her voice, to feel her connection. But she didn't answer. She was working, always working. I understand, but it hurts to be so alone, to feel so unseen. The water, it will take everything away. My last words, my last breath, unheard, unseen. The guilt, a physical weight, pressed down on me. She had called me to tell me, not to say goodbye, but to share her secret, her pain. And I had been too busy, too wrapped up in my own structured world. November 8th, the water is calling. It's almost time. I've tried to put it all in my art, to put it in these words, the raw, unfiltered truth. If anyone ever finds this, know that I didn't blame anyone. Not truly. I just wanted to be seen, to be understood. My love for you, Olivia, Mom, it transcends this. But the unspoken, it can be the heaviest burden. The water, it does not forgive. It does not forget. The water does not forgive. The water does not forget. Her words from my dreams, it wasn't about my forgiveness. It was about her fear of being unremembered, unseen, unforgiven for keeping her secret. I closed the journal, my body shaking with silent sobs. The truth, raw and devastating, washed over me. Chloe hadn't been angry. She had been dying, alone, and she had called me, not to punish me, but to reach out, to be seen, truly seen, one last time. My silence had been a wound, not a crime, and her unforgiveness was her own desperate cry for understanding, not a condemnation of me. Chapter 4, The Artist's Legacy. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, a fitting backdrop for the tumultuous emotions swirling within me. I sat in Chloe's studio, surrounded by her art, the journal clutched in my hands. I had to tell someone. I had to share her story, her truth. The first person who came to mind was Elijah. He had loved her fiercely, in his own tumultuous way. He deserved to know. I found his number in Chloe's old phone. He was still in Portland, still playing music in local bars. His voice, when he answered, was guarded, laced with a familiar melancholy. "Elijah, it's Olivia," I began, my voice trembling. "I'm at Chloe's house. I found something. About Chloe, about her death." A beat of silence. Then a raw, choked sound. "What is it, Olivia? Did she leave a note?" "She left a journal," I said, my voice breaking. "And a diagnosis. Elijah, she was sick, terminally ill. She was dying of cancer. She hid it from everyone." Another silence. Then a ragged sob from the other end of the line. "Oh God," he whispered. I knew something was wrong. She had these moments of intense pain. She'd just go quiet, or she'd hide. She always said it was just artist's block or a bad migraine, but I felt it, something deeper. She spoke of her hands fading, I said, looking at the unfinished self-portrait. And the mist, the water that doesn't forgive. The mist, Elijah repeated. His voice haunted. She said that to me once, that she was trying to capture the feeling of the mist, of things unseen in her last paintings, and the unforgiving water. She always talked about the ocean having a memory, that it held all the stories, all the pain, and it never let go. I thought she meant the pain of our broken relationship. No, I said, my voice thick with tears. She meant her own pain, her fear of being forgotten, her fear of her battle being unseen, her fear that she wouldn't be forgiven for keeping her secret. Elijah came that night. He sat in the studio, reading Chloe's journal, his face a mask of grief and profound understanding. He remembered the exact moment of her last call to me, the anxiety in her voice when I hadn't answered. He had been with her. She wanted to tell you, Olivia, he said, his eyes red. She really did. She was so weak. She wanted to tell you she loved you, and that she was scared. We sat in silence for a long time, sharing our grief, our regrets, our shared love for the extraordinary woman who had hidden her suffering from us all. The self-portrait, Elijah said finally, his gaze falling on the canvas. Her hands, she always said she couldn't finish them, that they wouldn't cooperate, that they were fading. She said they didn't see, I whispered, realizing the double meaning. My hands, the hands of her loved ones, hadn't seen her pain. My hands, the hands of the architect, too busy building my own world, hadn't reached out to truly see her. We have to finish it, Elijah said, his voice firm. For her hands to be seen. The idea was both daunting and profoundly right. It was a symbolic act, a way to finally see Chloe, to acknowledge her pain, her sacrifice, her silent battle. The next few days, Elijah and I worked together in her studio. He, the musician, the one who understood her soul. I, the architect, the one who could bring structure to chaos. We mixed paints, consulted her other works, trying to capture the essence of her style, her vision. We painted her hands, not faded or mist-shrouded, but strong, vibrant, reaching out, reaching for connection. As I painted, the dreams began to change. The crashing waves softened. Chloe's face in the dreams, once enigmatic, now held a gentle, loving smile. The words she spoke were no longer cryptic accusations, but tender affirmations. I'm here, Liv. You see me. I'm free. The unspoken farewell was finally spoken, not in words, but in understanding. Chapter 5. The Tides of Forgiveness. Completing Chloe's final painting was a cathartic act, the tangible manifestation of the healing that was beginning within me. Her hands, vibrant and strong on the canvas, felt like a silent testament to her resilience, to her enduring spirit. Old John, a weathered fisherman who lived a few houses down, a man who had known Chloe for years, often stopped by. He'd see me arrive, a stranger to the quiet cove, and his ancient eyes held a knowing gaze. He'd observed Chloe from afar, her solitary walks, her hours spent by the ocean. She was a quiet one, that girl, old John said one afternoon, leaning against the porch railing, his voice raspy from years of sea air. But she carried a lot. You could see it in her eyes, like the ocean itself, deep, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy, and full of secrets. He looked at the finished painting, his eyes softening. She always said her hands were tied to something unseen. But you helped untie them. You gave her hands back. His simple words, spoken without knowing the full truth, resonated deeply. My guilt, once a suffocating shroud, began to lift, replaced by a profound sense of understanding. Forgiveness wasn't something Chloe had to bestow upon me. It was something I had to find within myself. By understanding her truth, by acknowledging her pain, and by allowing myself to let go of the impossible burden of what-ifs. Elijah and I decided to create a small memorial for Chloe on the beach, near the old sentinel tree. We gathered smoothed stones, driftwood, and laid the completed self-portrait, now framed, on a sturdy easel. We invited our mother, Eleanor. Eleanor arrived, her face etched with a year of unspoken grief. She looked at the painting, her eyes wide with shock. "Her hands," she whispered, touching the canvas gently. "They're so alive." She always said her hands weren't working right. I just thought she was being dramatic. She was so good at hiding things. She read the journal, her face crumbling as she absorbed the devastating truth of Chloe's silent battle. The raw, guttural sobs that racked her body were a release of years of pent-up grief, not just for Chloe's death, but for the invisible suffering she had endured. "We didn't see," Eleanor wept, looking at me, her eyes filled with anguish. "We didn't see her. We didn't know. She didn't want us to," I said, my voice soft. "She wanted us to remember her as she was, but she also wanted us to see her, to understand her pain." We stood together on the beach, the three of us, united in our shared sorrow and newfound understanding. The waves crashed against the shore, no longer sounding like an accusation, but like a gentle lullaby. The unforgiving waters were not Chloe's judgment, but her own fear of being unacknowledged, unremembered. The dreams of Chloe began to change. She still visited, but now she was vibrant, radiant, dancing in the light. Her unfinished hands, now whole and strong, she would simply smile, a loving, knowing smile, and the whispers would be of peace, of comfort, of enduring love. The unspoken farewell had finally been understood. I realized I couldn't go back to my old life in Boston. The sterile lines, the cold precision, no longer resonated. My purpose had shifted. I needed to honor Chloe, not just in memory, but in action. I decided to stay in Maine. I sold my Boston townhouse and bought Chloe's cottage, intending to preserve her studio, her artistic legacy. I began to paint again, something I hadn't done since art school, finding solace and healing in the vibrant colors and fluid lines. It wasn't about perfection, but about expression, about feeling. I established a small memorial fund in Chloe's name, using some of my own considerable resources, and later contributions from grateful artists. The Chloe's Unseen Hands Fund, as I called it, provided grants for young, struggling artists, especially those dealing with chronic illness or hidden struggles, ensuring their work and their pain would be seen. Elijah and I remained close, bound by our shared experience. We often sat in Chloe's studio, listening to her music, talking about her, keeping her spirit alive. There was a quiet understanding between us, a bond forged in grief and healing. My relationship with my mother slowly, painstakingly mended. We spoke of Chloe constantly, no longer avoiding the painful truths, but embracing them. We grieved openly, healed together, and forged a stronger, more honest connection. Life on the coast was slower, more authentic. The ocean, once a symbol of my guilt, became a source of comfort, its endless rhythm a reminder of the cyclical nature of life, death, and renewal. I learned to listen to the whispers, not just of the wind and the waves, but of the unspoken emotions, the hidden truths that connect us all. My sister, Chloe, had left me with a profound gift: the ability to truly see, to truly hear, and to finally truly forgive not just her, but myself. The unspoken farewell had transformed into a lifelong conversation of love, remembrance, and the enduring power of a sister's bond.